Be me, 34-year-old woman working in corporate communications. Always considered myself aware, conscious of power dynamics, someone who actually gives a shit about making workplaces safer. Not the type to post about it constantly or make it my whole personality, just someone who actually pays attention when women talk about their experiences. Spent years in meetings being the one to point out when someone gets talked over, when credit gets stolen, when the pattern becomes too obvious to ignore. Volunteered with a local organization helping women navigate workplace discrimination cases. Read the studies, knew the statistics, understood how rarely false accusations actually happen compared to unreported assaults. Had seen too many women I knew personally stay silent about real incidents because they knew no one would believe them. That's the context I'm living in when this whole thing starts. March 2019, regular Tuesday afternoon, email goes out from HR about a serious allegation being investigated. Standard vague corporate language about commitment to safe workplace, taking all reports seriously, cooperating with investigation. Within hours, the Whisper network activates. Woman from the marketing department, Jessica, reported that Timothy from product development sexually assaulted her at the company holiday party 3 months ago. Timothy's one of those guys who's just there, mid-40s, quiet, competent at his job, married with 2 kids. Never the loudest voice in meetings, never trying to be the center of attention. I'd worked with him on a few cross-departmental projects. He'd always been professional if somewhat reserved. My immediate reaction is the same calculation I always make in these situations. Statistically, she's almost certainly telling the truth. The holiday party was in December. It's now March, which fits the pattern of delayed reporting because of trauma, shame, fear of retaliation. Women don't put themselves through the hell of making these accusations for fun. The professional and social cost is enormous. Therefore, support Jessica, believe Jessica, make sure she knows she's not alone. I reach out to her through a mutual contact to offer support. She accepts. We meet for coffee. She's shaking while she tells me about it. Describes how Timothy cornered her in a hallway near the bathrooms when most people had left the party. How he touched her, pushed her against the wall, put his hand under her dress. How she froze, how she couldn't scream, how she just wanted it to stop, how she'd been too terrified to report it immediately because Timothy was well-liked and she was relatively new. Everything about her account sounds consistent with what I know about how trauma works. The delayed reporting, the fragmented memories, the fear, the self-blame. I tell her I believe her, that she did the right thing by coming forward, and offer to be there for whatever she needs. Over the next few days, Timothy is placed on administrative leave. Standard procedure, the company says, doesn't indicate guilt, but we all know what it really means. Guilty until proven innocent isn't supposed to be how it works, but in sexual assault cases, proving innocence is nearly impossible. How do you prove something didn't happen? Meanwhile, I start noticing the response patterns. The men in the office, especially the older ones, get this defensive look. Lots of muttering about witch hunts and what happened to due process. Same shit you always hear, same predictable backlash. Makes me more convinced that supporting Jessica is the right thing. Timothy tries to return to work after a week. HR won't let him until investigation concludes. He sends an email to the whole department. I still remember reading it at my desk. I understand a serious allegation has been made against me. I want to state clearly and unequivocally that I did not do what I'm being accused of. I was not alone with Jessica at any point during the holiday party. I left early that night because my daughter was sick. I'm cooperating fully with the investigation, and I'm confident the truth will come out. I'm asking my colleagues to please reserve judgment until all facts are known. My immediate reaction is frustration. Of course he's denying it. They always deny it. The "I left early" excuse sounds like exactly the kind of thing someone would say. Easy to claim, hard to verify months later. The phrasing about his sick daughter feels manipulative, designed to make him seem like a family man who couldn't possibly do such a thing, as if having kids has ever stopped anyone from doing terrible things. I don't respond to the email. Most people don't. Silence feels like the appropriate response. Over the following weeks, things escalate. Local news picks up the story. Not because Timothy or Jessica are important, but because the company is prominent enough and it's a slow news cycle. Tech company faces sexual assault allegations, runs on a few local outlets. They don't name names initially, but everyone in the industry knows. Jessica does an interview, face obscured, voice altered, talks about the broader culture of harassment in tech, how companies protect perpetrators, how coming forward was the hardest thing she's ever done. I watch it and feel angry all over again. Angry at how brave she has to be just to tell the truth. Angry at the system that makes this necessary. Timothy's name leaks somehow. Suddenly, he's got a minor online presence as people start digging. His LinkedIn gets flooded with messages calling him a predator. Someone finds his Facebook and harasses his wife. I see screenshots being shared. His wife posts something defending him, saying she knows her husband and he couldn't have done this. The response is predictable. Wives never know. She's in denial. Standing by an abuser makes you complicit. I don't participate in the pile-on, but I don't defend him either. What is there to defend? He says he didn't do it. She says he did. I know which side I'm on. The company's investigation drags on. Timothy is kept on administrative leave, still technically employed but not allowed on premises. I hear through the grapevine that he's asked repeatedly to see the specific allegations in detail, wants to know exact times, locations, who else was there. Company won't give him details, say it could compromise the investigation. Seems reasonable to me at the time. Protect the victim. Don't let the perpetrator build a defense by knowing exactly what he needs to explain away. But Timothy apparently keeps pushing. Sends detailed timeline of his own movements that night. Security camera footage requests. Witness statements from people who were at the party. Credit card receipt showing he paid for an Uber at 9:47 p.m. Testimony from his wife about their daughter being sick. Pediatric urgent care records from that night showing they brought her in at 10:30 p.m. All of this gets dismissed as, of course, he's trying to build an alibi. The thing about evidence is it can be manufactured, manipulated, explained away. And in sexual assault cases, the physical evidence is often minimal or non-existent. It becomes, he said, she said, and in he said, she said, I believe women. Simple as that. Not because women never lie, but because the vast majority of the time they're telling the truth, and the cost of disbelieving a real victim is greater than the cost of believing a false accusation. That's the math I've always done. That's the framework I've always operated in. Around week 6, Timothy's wife files for separation. This becomes public because he apparently breaks down in a phone call with a colleague who then tells other people. He's begging his wife to believe him. She says she doesn't know what to believe anymore. Everyone's telling her he did it. Her friends are saying she needs to protect herself and the kids. The social pressure is enormous. I hear this and think, if even his wife is wavering, what does that tell you? His kid's school apparently has other parents requesting his children be moved to different classes. Not because the kids did anything, but because of who their father is. Guilt by association seems harsh, but also understandable. Parents protecting their children from potential danger. Timothy's mental state becomes a concern that even his accusers notice. He's apparently lost significant weight. Someone sees him at a grocery store and reports that he looked completely dead behind the eyes. His brother puts out a statement on Facebook defending him. Gets attacked immediately for defending a rapist. Has to delete it within hours. I watch all of this happen and feel complicated. On one hand, yes, this is brutal. On the other hand, this is what accountability looks like. For too long, men got away with this shit. Now there are consequences. Real consequences. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but that's the point. The company's investigation concludes. After 2 months, they determined that while they cannot definitively prove the allegation, they also cannot disprove it. Jessica's account is credible and consistent. Timothy's denials are noted, but the company has a zero-tolerance policy. He's terminated. Not for misconduct exactly, but for loss of confidence and creating an unsafe work environment. The phrasing is careful, legal, designed to avoid defamation issues. But everyone knows what it means. Timothy tries to fight it, gets a lawyer, threatens to sue. Company has deeper pockets and better lawyers. His lawyer apparently tells him that even if he wins, the reputational damage means he'll never work in the industry again. Better to take a settlement and move on. He refuses the settlement initially. Says taking money and signing an NDA means admitting guilt. Says he wants his day in court, wants the truth to come out. His lawyer apparently explains that truth is irrelevant. In the court of public opinion, he's already been convicted. A lawsuit will just drag it out, keep his name in the news, make everything worse. He'll lose his savings fighting it, and end up in the same place. This all filters through to me through the office gossip network. And I'll admit, part of me feels vindicated. This is what it looks like when the system actually works for once. When a woman comes forward and is believed. When there are real consequences. Yes, it's brutal, but compare it to how many men have done this and faced nothing. How many women have been dismissed, ignored, called liars. The scales balancing doesn't feel good, but it feels necessary. Around month 4, I noticed Jessica's social media presence increasing. She's become more public with her story, starts speaking at events about workplace safety, gives talks about believing survivors, writes an article for a women's advocacy blog about her experience. I see her at a few professional events. She's become somewhat prominent in certain circles. I'm happy for her. Turning trauma into advocacy is powerful. She's helping other women find the courage to come forward. Timothy has completely disappeared from public view. His social media is deleted. His LinkedIn is gone. Mutual acquaintances say he's basically unemployable. Background checks will always turn up the allegations. Even without a conviction, the association is there. His marriage apparently ends officially. His wife gets primary custody because there are concerns about the environment he could provide. The concerns are never specifically articulated, but everyone knows what they mean. I hear he's working some kind of manual labor job, something where they don't do thorough background checks. Something way below his skill level and education. Supporting 2 households on a fraction of his previous income. Living in a studio apartment somewhere. His kids apparently don't want to see him. They're teenagers now, and their peers know who their father is. The social stigma is too much. All of this happens over the course of about 8 months. I watch a man's entire life disintegrate, and I keep telling myself it's justified. This is what he chose when he assaulted Jessica. These are the consequences of his actions. Then month 9 happens. Jessica gets into a relationship with a guy from a different company. They go public with it on social media. Cute couple photos, weekend getaways, the whole thing. Good for her, moving on with her life after trauma is healthy. Then about 2 weeks into them being public, something shifts. They have a bad breakup, apparently. The details are vague, but it's clearly messy. And then the guy posts something, a long, detailed Facebook post. I read it standing in my kitchen and feel the floor tilt. He describes how Jessica told him, privately, after they'd been dating for a bit, that she'd fabricated the allegation against Timothy. How she'd been angry about being passed over for a promotion that Timothy had been involved in the decision for. How she'd seen the Me Too movement and realized she could weaponize it. How she'd studied what real assault allegations looked like and crafted her story carefully. How she'd known that delayed reporting would be seen as consistent with trauma. How she'd deliberately shown the right emotional responses. How the holiday party gave her a framework that was months in the past and therefore hard to definitively disprove. How she'd told the boyfriend all of this as a kind of confession. Said she felt guilty sometimes, but also felt powerful. Said she'd destroyed a man who'd slighted her, and everyone had believed her. Said it was surprisingly easy. The boyfriend's post includes screenshots of text messages between them, Jessica's words, talking about how she played everyone. How once you accuse someone of that, they're basically guilty forever. How no one wants to be the person who doesn't believe the victim. I read this, and my first instinct is disbelief. This has to be fake. A bitter ex trying to hurt her. Manufacturing screenshots isn't hard. Jessica immediately posts her own response. Calls him abusive. Says he's trying to discredit her because she broke up with him. Says this is exactly the kind of retaliation survivors face, and I want to believe her. I want this to be another example of a man trying to destroy a woman who spoke truth, but something nags at me. The screenshots look real. The language in them is specific, detailed, consistent. I'm good at spotting manipulated images from my communications work. These don't look manipulated. The boyfriend posts more. Voicemails of Jessica talking about it. In one, she's laughing about how Timothy lost everything. I says, he should have just given me the promotion. The voice is clearly hers. I've heard her speak dozens of times. That's her laugh, her cadence, her voice. Social media erupts. People are calling for investigation. Jessica doubles down initially, says the recordings are taken out of context, says she was role-playing or being sarcastic, but the explanations get weaker. The boyfriend keeps posting evidence, emails she'd sent him, more recorded conversations. Some of it is clearly revenge for the breakup. He's trying to hurt her. But the core claim, the one about the false accusation, has too much supporting it. The company reopens the investigation. Jessica hires a lawyer. The lawyer advises her to stop talking publicly, which she does, abruptly. The silence is conspicuous. I'm watching all this unfold and feeling something I don't have words for yet. Sick, maybe. Scared. Complicit. The company's new investigation moves faster this time. They interview the boyfriend. They review the evidence he provided. They go back and look at things they'd dismissed before. Timothy's timeline. The security footage. Turns out there is footage from the holiday party. The cameras in the hallway where Jessica said it happened. The footage was reviewed before, but dismissed because it showed the hallway empty during the time frame Jessica initially gave. She'd explained that she must have been confused about the exact time because of the trauma. That seemed reasonable then. Now they look at the whole night's footage. Timothy is never alone with Jessica. Not once. Not in that hallway. Not anywhere the cameras cover. And the cameras cover most of the venue. They pull his Uber records. He did leave at 9:47 p.m. The Uber GPS confirms pickup location and time. The urgent care visit with his daughter is verified, time-stamped at 10:31 p.m. The drive time between the party venue and the urgent care is consistent. Jessica had claimed the assault happened around 10:15 p.m. Timothy was literally in a car with an Uber driver at that time, then with his wife and sick daughter at urgent care. The company interviews other party attendees more thoroughly this time. Multiple people remember Timothy leaving early. Remember him saying his daughter was sick. Remember Jessica being there. Much later, well after he'd gone, everything falls apart. The evidence isn't ambiguous anymore. It's definitive. Timothy didn't do it because he literally couldn't have. He was in a different location at the time, with multiple witnesses. He'd been saying this from day one. He'd provided this evidence from day one. But no one looked at it seriously, including me. I dismissed it as alibi building. Assumed he was lying or mistaken or manipulating the timeline. Because that's what guilty people do. Except he wasn't guilty. The company issues a statement. They conclude the allegation was false. Jessica's employment is terminated. They reach out to Timothy's lawyer about settlement. Timothy is apparently in such bad mental state that it takes 3 days for his lawyer to even reach him. He's been living in a studio apartment, working at a warehouse, no internet, barely functional. His brother is the one who finally tells him. The brother later posts about it, says Timothy didn't react with anger or vindication. Just collapsed and cried for hours. Kept saying, I told them. Why didn't anyone believe me? The news outlets that had covered the accusation now cover the retraction, but with less prominence. Allegations proven false in tech company case runs on page 5 instead of page 1. Online, the story spreads but differently. Some people apologize, many go silent, some double down, say this one false accusation doesn't invalidate believing women. Which is true in the abstract, but feels hollow right now. I think about reaching out to Timothy, to apologize, to say I was wrong. But what could I possibly say? Sorry I participated in destroying your entire life based on assumptions. Sorry I didn't take your evidence seriously. Sorry I thought your desperate attempts to prove your innocence were just what guilty people do. I don't reach out. I'm too ashamed, and what good would it do him anyway? His wife hasn't taken him back. She apparently feels terrible, but the trust is shattered. The separation became divorce. His kids are slowly coming around, but years of believing their father was a predator doesn't just evaporate. The damage to those relationships may never fully heal. His career is effectively over, even with the exoneration. the stain remains. Google his name, and the accusations still come up. The retractions are there too, but mud sticks. Employers see sexual assault allegations in someone's background and move on to other candidates. Doesn't matter that it was false. The association is enough. He's apparently suing Jessica for defamation. His lawyer says they have a strong case. But Jessica has no assets. She lost her job, her reputation, can't get blood from a stone. Even if he wins, what does he win? Some judgment she'll never be able to pay. Won't bring back his marriage, his relationship with his kids, his career, his mental health. Won't give him back the year of hell. Won't erase the trauma of having everyone, believe you're a rapist. I attend a work event about 3 months after the truth comes out. Someone brings up the case, talks about how crazy it was, how that woman was psycho. I stay quiet. Someone else says, this is why we need to be careful about believing accusations. Someone argues back that false accusations are rare, and we can't let one case undermine support for real victims. Which is statistically true, but I keep thinking about Timothy, about how his rarity doesn't make his suffering less real, about how the statistical improbability of false accusations meant nothing to him when he was the statistic. I think about all the times I shared posts about believing women. All the times I said, she has nothing to gain by lying, except Jessica did have something to gain. Revenge, power, attention, career opportunities from advocacy. I think about how I'd calculated that the harm of disbelieving a real victim outweighed the harm of believing a false accusation, how I'd thought that was a reasonable ethical framework, but I'd never been on the receiving end of being the acceptable collateral damage Timothy had. I start noticing things I'd missed before. The way people talked about believing women as an absolute. The way any request for evidence was treated as victim-blaming. The way the burden of proof had shifted entirely. Not in courts, maybe, but in public opinion, in workplaces, in social circles. I'd participated in that shift, thought it was necessary and right. Overcompensation for centuries of women not being believed. But overcorrection is still correction past the point of accuracy. I find myself in this weird psychological space. I still believe the statistics. False accusations are genuinely rare. The vast majority of women who report assault are telling the truth. The vast majority of women who are assaulted never report at all. Those facts haven't changed. But now I also know, viscerally, what happens when the rare, false accusation occurs. I know what it looks like when someone innocent is destroyed, when evidence is dismissed, when denials are treated as proof of guilt, when the system meant to protect victims becomes a weapon. And I know I was part of it. I meet with Jessica's boyfriend at some point, not sure why I do this, maybe trying to understand. He's bitter, angry at Jessica, but also at himself. Says he violated her trust by exposing her, but couldn't live with knowing what she'd done. I ask him if he thinks she feels guilty. He says sometimes, but mostly she felt justified. Said she convinced herself Timothy deserved it somehow, that even if that specific incident didn't happen, he was probably guilty of something. That men like him get away with things all the time, so balancing the scales isn't really wrong. The rationalization is familiar. I've heard versions of it before, have maybe thought versions of it myself. The idea that even if this particular accusation isn't true, it's true in a larger sense, that individual justice matters less than systemic justice. Hearing it described about Timothy makes me feel sick. I try to go back to my advocacy work, the organization I volunteer with, helping women with workplace discrimination. But I find myself hesitating now. When someone tells me their story, I still believe them. But there's this new voice in my head asking questions. What if this is the rare exception? What if I'm being manipulated? What if I help destroy an innocent person? I hate this voice. It feels like betraying other women, but I can't unhear it. One of the women I'm helping notices my hesitation, asks if I'm okay. I tell her about the Timothy situation. She says, "That's awful, but we can't let one false accusation make us doubt real victims," which is exactly what I would have said before, and she's right. But she's also never watched someone innocent get destroyed, never seen the specific mechanisms of how it happens, never sat with the knowledge that she participated. I realize I'm not the same person I was a year ago. The certainty is gone. I used to know exactly where I stood. Believe women, support survivors, hold perpetrators accountable. Simple, clear, morally unambiguous. Now everything feels complicated. I still believe women should be believed, but I also know belief isn't the same as proof. I still think workplace protections for accusers are necessary, but I also think the accused deserve some kind of due process. I still support survivors, but I'm aware now that not everyone claiming to be a survivor is one, and I have no idea how to hold all of these thoughts at once. The Timothy case becomes something of a reference point in certain circles. Men's rights groups use it as proof that false accusations are everywhere, which isn't true, they're not. Feminist groups dismiss it as an outlier that shouldn't change anything, which is statistically true but feels insufficient. I find myself unable to fit neatly into either camp anymore. I see posts about how we need to believe all women, and I think about Timothy saying, "I told them," over and over. I see posts about how false accusations are a myth used to silence victims, and I think about Jessica laughing about destroying him. Both things are real. Women are assaulted and not believed all the time, and sometimes accusations are false and the accused is destroyed. These facts coexist, but we're not good at holding complexity. We want simple narratives, clear good guys and bad guys. I used to have that, now I don't. I think about reaching out to Timothy again. Months have passed since the truth came out, and maybe enough time has passed. Maybe an apology would mean something, but I still can't do it. What would I even say? "I'm sorry I was part of the mob that destroyed you because I was so convinced I was doing the right thing. I'm sorry I dismissed your evidence because I'd decided guilty people always claim evidence. I'm sorry your suffering was acceptable to me in service of a larger cause. I'm sorry you were rare enough to be dismissed. None of it seems adequate. None of it fixes anything. I run into Timothy's brother at some point. He recognizes me from the office. I can see him deciding whether to say something, what he does. Asks if I feel good about what I did to his brother. I tell him I'm sorry, that I didn't know. He says, "I didn't want to know," says Timothy was screaming his innocence from day one. Provided evidence from day one. Begged people to just look at it objectively, and no one did. Because we'd all decided that asking for evidence was the same as victim blaming. He's right. I didn't want to know. I wanted Timothy to be guilty because it fit my framework. Because believing Jessica felt like the right thing. Because supporting women was my identity. And Timothy's actual innocence or guilt mattered less than that. The brother walks away. Doesn't yell, doesn't make a scene. Just leaves me standing there with that truth. I think about frameworks a lot now. How I'd built an entire worldview around certain principles. Believe women. Support survivors. The system is rigged against victims, so we need to overcorrect. Those principles aren't wrong exactly, but they're incomplete. They don't account for the Timothys of the world. And when I was forced to choose between my framework and Timothy's reality, I chose the framework. We all did. His employer chose the framework over evidence. His friends chose the framework over years of knowing him. The media chose the framework over investigation. His wife eventually chose the framework over her marriage. I chose the framework over basic fairness, and we all felt righteous doing it. That's what haunts me most. Not that I made a mistake, but that I made it while feeling morally superior, while convinced I was on the right side, while judging anyone who questioned it as part of the problem. Timothy's life is apparently stabilizing somewhat. He has a job that's beneath his qualifications but pays bills. His kids see him sometimes. His mental health is better than it was, but he'll never get back what he lost. The years of his marriage that ended. The time with his kids during crucial developmental years. The career he built over decades. The reputation he had. The basic trust that if you tell the truth and provide evidence, people will listen. That's gone forever. Jessica faced consequences, but they're not equivalent. She lost her job and reputation too, but she didn't lose her family. She didn't lose years of her life. Didn't have to live as a pariah accused of violent crime. And honestly, the consequences she faces are partially buffered by people like me, people who still kind of want to defend her. Want to say she's an outlier. want to minimize what she did because we're afraid of the implications. If we fully acknowledge what she did and what it means, then we have to acknowledge that our framework was flawed, that believing all women categorically can destroy innocent people, that evidence and due process matter even in sexual assault cases, that the accused deserve something more than just being believed guilty by default. And acknowledging that feels dangerous. Feels like giving ground to people who want to silence real victims. Feels like betraying other women. Feels like becoming the enemy. So we equivocate, say this doesn't change anything. Say false accusations are still rare. Say we can't let this undermine progress, all of which is true, but also insufficient. Also a way of avoiding responsibility. I'm avoiding responsibility right now. I never apologized to Timothy, never publicly acknowledged I was wrong, never examined how many other situations I might have gotten wrong. Just quietly shifted some internal assumptions and moved on. Let Timothy carry the cost of my education. That's what this was, really. Timothy's destroyed life was the price of my learning that my framework was incomplete. His suffering was my tuition, and I didn't even have the courage to acknowledge it to him directly. Just internalized some lessons and continued my life, while he tries to rebuild his from rubble. I see posts now about believing women, and I don't share them anymore. Not because I don't believe women, but because the absolutism feels dangerous now. I know what the edge cases look like. I've seen the human cost, and I can't pretend I haven't. But I also can't fully articulate what the alternative is. What does it look like to believe women while also protecting the innocent? To support victims while also having due process? To take accusations seriously while also taking denials seriously? I don't know. The old framework was simple. This new awareness is complicated and uncomfortable, doesn't fit into social media posts, doesn't make me feel righteous, just makes me feel complicit and uncertain. I think Timothy would probably say that's the least I deserve, to sit with discomfort and uncertainty, while he sits with the ruins of his life. And he'd be right. The thing that keeps me up at night isn't even the big injustice. It's the small moments I remember now differently. The email where he said, "I'm asking my colleagues to please reserve judgment," and I thought he was being manipulative, the evidence he provided, and I thought he was trying to confuse the issue, his wife's defense of him, and I thought she was in denial. Every single thing he did to prove his innocence, I interpreted as evidence of guilt, because that's what the framework told me to do. Guilty people deny and make excuses and provide alternative explanations. Therefore, if he's denying and making excuses and providing alternative explanations, he's guilty. Circular logic that I couldn't see because I didn't want to. I look back at the version of myself from before all this, so certain, so confident in my moral clarity, and I don't recognize her. Or maybe I do, and that's worse. Maybe she's still me, just with a layer of awareness. That doesn't absolve anything, doesn't change what I participated in, just makes me conscious of my capacity to destroy someone while feeling righteous about it. That's the thing I can't escape. I'm capable of that. We all are. We all were. Everyone who dismissed Timothy's pleas. Everyone who shared articles about the accusations. Everyone who sent him hateful messages. Everyone who told his wife she was complicit. Everyone who made his children pariahs. We all did that while feeling like good people. Like we were standing up for what's right. That's not a comforting realization. It's not a redemption arc. It's just knowledge. Heavy, uncomfortable knowledge about what I'm capable of when I'm convinced I'm right. Timothy's case didn't change the statistics. False accusations are still rare. Most accusers are telling the truth. Most assault goes unreported. The system is still biased against victims in most ways. All of that remains true. But none of it helped Timothy. His statistical improbability didn't make his suffering less real, and my statistical reasoning didn't make my complicity less damning. I still work in corporate communications, still consider myself someone who cares about making workplaces safer, still think feminist principles matter. But I'm not the person I was. I'm someone who watched an innocent man lose everything, and helped it happen. and learned too late that certainty is dangerous, and frameworks are incomplete, and good intentions don't prevent terrible outcomes. I'm someone who has to live with that now. Live with knowing what I'm capable of, what we're all capable of. When we stop seeing individuals and start seeing symbols, when we stop weighing evidence and start protecting ideology, when we decide that some collateral damage is acceptable for the greater good. Timothy was collateral damage, rare, statistical, unfortunate, and utterly destroyed. I don't have a resolution to offer, no lesson that makes it okay, no framework that prevents it from happening again. Just the knowledge that it happened, that I was part of it, and that somewhere Timothy is trying to build a life from pieces, while I'm trying to figure out how to be a person who did what I did, and still somehow move forward. That's where I am now, sitting with complexity I don't want, awareness I can't unknow, complicity I can't undo, and the ghost of my own certainty haunting everything I do.